We welcome in our man James Hanholm, our Kings insider from the Insiders here on MLK Day. James, a nice little day off for you as you got a tough stretch coming up with the Sacramento Kings playing Miami tomorrow and Toronto on Wednesday. But let's start with the games over the weekend. We saw Domantas Sabonis return. It's been kind of the talk, at least of the Kings portion of today's show. What do you make of Domantas Sabonis in his return, and do you think we're going to see some adjustments from Doug Christie moving forward, meaning more time on the floor for Domantas Sabonis as games start to add up?
Yeah, first up, I don't know what you mean by a day off. I already had a radio show. I just did a podcast. Now I'm back on with you guys, so not quite sure.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
At least you don't have to drive to the Golden One Center today.
No, that's true. That's true. Look, I think that there's going to be...
Sorry. Oh, my gosh.
You just saw
it? Sorry. And I was going to keep it quiet when I saw it, but I wouldn't expect it. Yeah.
He hit him with a baseball
bat. Crap out of him.
You know that was real, too, because they all hated Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah. Right.
Sorry,
right.
James. That's my
At least I know who the Ultimate Warrior was. And
there you go. Even James knows.
They
James
were a
knows.
lot of fun to play the video game with the Ultimate Warrior and those guys.
The arcade game
was it Royal
dope.
Rumble? That was the game. Well, Royal Rumble came out on the game systems.
Oh, okay.
I think it was WWF is what I played on. Maybe it might have been Royal Rumble, but I don't think so.
I have eyeballed that stand up
arcade joint.
For a long time. I've never do it. I know I won't, but it's so dope.
Yeah, I've got two of them. I've got the Rampage with Joust and Defender and Gauntlet down here because Gauntlet was my game. And then upstairs we have the in the game room we have the Street Fighter one.
I've never been to the game room.
You ever been up to the pool table?
Nope.
All right. Yeah.
No.
Next time you're up here.
I didn't have security clearance to get up there.
True.
There we go.
Gotta make sure.
Look, I think that when it comes to Domas, it's going to be a bit of a process here. Like, again, we have a back-to-back coming up tomorrow and on Wednesday. I have no idea if he's going to play in both of those games. He could play in one. He could play in both. He could play in neither. I think that's where we're at. You're going to give him little bits at a time to test that knee and see where it's at. But you also have to remember that, like the trade deadline is like, I don't know, 15 days away, 16 days away, whatever it is, and maybe 17. Whether Domas is going to be part of a trade that goes out the door or not, you need to build him up the right way and make sure that he's healthy for the rest of his career throughout this debacle that it has been his knee issue. So, I think that they're going to slowly bring him along. I think there's a very distinct possibility that, if they could get a day of practice in, which I don't think they got a full-fledged day of practice in today, but if you can get a little bit more practice time, you might see him slide back into the starting lineup pretty quickly. But, again, it looks like he's on a minutes restriction, whether it's 20 or it's 24 minutes, whatever it might be. And usually you progress like that. If he is on a minutes restriction, and the only reason I bring that up, he's played 20 minutes, 2 games in a row. I wouldn't be surprised to see him play 24 and then 26 or 28 and then start to get more towards what we've been used to with him. But they've got to take it really slow just to make sure that they don't have a misstep and a setback. And that could change a lot of things with the Sacramento Kings, whether it's him as a player or him as a potential trade chip.
James, when I watch Domantas Sabonis play, it looks like a guy who hasn't played full court 5-on-5 basketball in a long time. It doesn't look like he's necessarily trying to compensate for being hurt. It's just like, man, I haven't gone up and down the court for a long time. Why do you think they brought him back without having that type of practice interaction? Like usually you see, he's on the side court doing 5-on-5 or 3-on-3. Unless it's just something that, the reporters weren't privy to. It seems like they brought him back without having those moments. Is that unusual to you?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a couple of things here. Number one, like I don't think they really knew when he was coming back. Like they had a plan. That plan got extended. Again, remember, he was out a month, and then they told us, we'll reevaluate him in a month, right? We get to the month mark, maybe a week after or 4 or 5 days after the month mark, and they put him out an additional 4 to 5 weeks. That was like 3.5 weeks ago. So they've been waiting for his knee to respond and for whatever to happen that they need to get him back on the court. And then the problem is like the home games, right? So like this has been a stretch. I was just talking to my guys over at the Kings beat just a second ago, and like I don't remember a grouping of games, this many games at home over such a small amount of time. And so when you per NBA rules, you're not allowed to have practice after a back-to-back. So last Sunday, Monday, the Kings played the Rockets and the Lakers, so they can't practice on Tuesday. Then they played a game against the Knicks on Wednesday. You had a day where maybe you could have got in some practice on Thursday, but then you've got Friday, you've got Sunday. Like the games have just been nonstop, and even before that, I remember they were at home a bunch all the way through the beginning part of the month. So there just hasn't been a bunch of practice days. And I'm going to throw something else in that is very unusual. And that is that typically in these situations, when you're trying to get a player back on the court, you take a group of young players that aren't playing very much and you have them beat those guys up for like 3 or 4 days. Well, it just so happens that all your young bigs are playing. And so they're not going to practice and then go get beat up by Domas and then have to play a game. And I think the cycle of what's happening here is just a little off because of that. So, I mean, I guess it's possible he could have gone out and played against Drew Eubanks and Doug McDermott and a couple of your like training staff guys. But it's also possible that they just don't have an ability to get him out there. Maybe he could have played 4-on-4 and 2-on-2, and Dario Saric is out there with him. But yeah, I think it's more about the practice time and everything else. And there is usually like the Kings have a very distinct like return to play. We had heard a little bit. We'd seen Domas come out and do a little bit of warming up and stuff like that. But him like showing up out of nowhere on last Thursday and like, hey, I think he's going to play on Friday was very bizarre. But hey, sometimes it happens.
Is there a chance? Do you think there's a chance that maybe we don't see a big increase in Domantas Sabonis's minutes? Maybe there is a point where he returns, probably relatively soon, where he returns to the starting lineup, but you still see something. And I'll give Doug some leniency here and say this could be, game dependent, maybe similar to what we saw with Dylan Cardwell last night. But maybe the approach being, James, that, yeah, Domantas Sabonis is back in the starting lineup, but he's still living in the 20 to 25 minute range because we still want to play Dylan Cardwell and we still want to play Maxi right now.
I think it's pretty quickly he's going to be ramped up to 30 minutes a game. And whether we go to 36 minutes, I don't know, but I would just point to, guys like DeMar DeRozan playing 36 minutes a night, Russell Westbrook playing 36 minutes a night, a lot of nights. And like Doug has relied heavily on the veterans. Him and Domas have always had a very good relationship because they were, he was his personal trainer basically for 2 summers. They traveled together. I think he's going to try to get him back out there. And again, I think the numbers, they work. Again, if he's going to play, let's just say he plays 32 minutes, that leaves you 16 minutes at the center position, right? That someone else can play. And then you have the other 48 minutes at the power forward spot. So we're looking at 64 minutes. Like I think Precious and Max and Dylan can share those 64 minutes pretty easily. And especially while Keegan's out, where Keegan's not going to be playing the 4 at all. I think the real question will be, what does Doug do when Keegan gets back? And what does that mean for DeMar DeRozan? Or what does that mean for Zach LaVine? Or, does that mean that Nick Clifford doesn't get to play at all anymore? But I do think that there's going to be sort of a smoothing out here where you start seeing some of these other guys lose some minutes. And that's why I also think that we're probably going to have a little bit of fireworks around the trade deadline, because I do think there are going to be veterans on this team that you don't want to play in the second half of the season. And you're going to want to go to young players like Nick Clifford. You're going to want to give, a guy like Keegan Murray every opportunity at that small forward spot. And on top of that, you're going to want to see, hey, what does he look like with Precious? What is a front line of again, Domas, Keegan, and Precious, or Max and Domas, or Dylan and Domas with Keegan? Like, you need to see all those things going forward, unless Domas isn't part of this either, and he's sent out between now and February 5th.
I heard you guys talking about it earlier on the insiders, and I guess right now Kings are who they are. You play any lineup if you want to. I don't like the idea of the two bigs for any more than a couple minutes. The lack of shooting from pretty much everybody that will be involved in that, outside of maybe Precious, and even with Precious being able to shoot the way he has lately, that's not necessarily proven. But any combination of Domas, Maxine, Dylan, and Precious playing together, two at a time, I don't think that one's a good idea. But you think they're probably going to take some time to try and see that a few times, at the very least, before Keegan comes back?
Yeah, I think so. And even when Keegan does come back, like, look, I think that if you can use Domas in the high DHO, like way out at the 3-point line, you can create space that way. I've said it from the beginning, like when they built this team, I said, they don't have enough shooting. It's going to be a huge problem. And the shooters that they do have been in and out of the lineup, whether it's Keegan getting hurt, or it's Malik Monk being in the doghouse for a certain amount of time, or it's Keon Ellis not being able to find his spot in the rotation. Like, those are pretty much your three best shooters. And they haven't been around. They haven't been available, or they haven't been part of what's happening. Like, that's going to be the fatal flaw to this team the entire season. And you just kind of got to play through it. So I think, again, if you pull Domas way out at the top of the key and start running DHOs or high pick and rolls up there, that's how you're going to see this team create that space that you're talking about, Kenny. But I do agree. I mean, it's going to be interesting to figure it out. But I'd also tell you, like, Dylan Cardwell put up 12 points last night. It's his best season, his best game as a pro, scoring wise, and he's learning how to play in that dunker spot. And there have been plenty of teams that figure out how to use, a non-shooter and a rim running dunker. I mean, the Golden State Warriors with Draymond Green and JaVale McGee, they were able to figure it out with neither one of them shooting threes hardly at all. Now, they had some of the greatest 3-point shooters ever all around them, but there are other teams that have been able to find success doing this. And, like, look, fact is, Domas has to hit the 3 ball, and he's got to take them. And, I love the idea of Dylan Cardwell as a true rim runner and Domas as a trailer. That can work, especially if you go Domas as a trailer and go right into a pick and roll or DHO action at the top of the key and start having all of the action kind of pulled back out to the perimeter while Dylan's down in the dunking spot. I think a lot of what we saw in the game last night is totally repeatable. Eventually, someone might start defend Dylan Cardwell. But remember last season when the Kings played the Dallas Mavericks and the Mavericks had no players and they were horrible and they couldn't sign anybody because they had reached, they were hard capped.
Mhm.
And who was it that, they signed Kai Jones, and Kai Jones just dunked on the Kings again and again and again and again and again. And he had like 18 points. That's what Dylan Cardwell can do. He can hide, on that baseline, hiding out somewhere. And as long as he's rebounding and moving and not just stagnant, you can figure out ways around the spacing issue a little bit. But I think truly on the defensive end, he's so good that I want to see more of him with Domas. I do. I just need Domas to be able to defend in space. And right now, I don't think he can with his knee.
How do you think this team has taken to Dylan Cardwell and some of his the on-court antics that get the crowd so riled up?
I think his teammates enjoy it. I think some of them are looking at him like, well, I wouldn't do that. But that doesn't mean that they don't see the joy and the energy. Now, on occasion, I think a teammate might smack him in the back of the head and say, hey, bro, the play is still going. Stop celebrating. Right? because I think at some point it's like, yeah, you're doing jumping jacks because you blocked a shot, but the shot went right back out and it's still live. And what are we doing? But overall, like, look, 2 weeks ago, this team was unbearable to watch, just horrible to watch. Nobody wanted to tune in. And now I think everybody does. They want to see what Dylan Cardwell is going to do next. And I don't look at him as a gimmick because he's just playing really, really hard. And he's like celebrating in a strange way. But I think everyone's okay because, like, look, it's become fun. And you don't want to be just the gimmick team that has the beam and then, this Dylan Cardwell thing and, Russ smacking his head every time he hits a 3-point shot. Like, I think the worst thing for the Kings is for Russ to go 5 of 9 and, like, by his 5th 3, you're worried that he's got concussion symptoms, because he keeps popping himself in the head every time. But like, look, this is part of the fun. If you're not enjoying the game of basketball, then what are you doing? It is a game.
I'll tell you what I'm enjoying really quickly on this day of Martin Luther the King. The New York Knicks are getting their ass kicked. It's 75-47 right now. Ooh. Max Christie and Najee Marshall are leading the way for the Dallas Mavericks.
They're at the Garden too, so I'm sure they're just.
I'm
really
sure
patient.
they're handling it very well.
Really patient.
I'm sure. Yeah, things are all good in Mike Brown land right now.
To James's point about the Kings, I don't want to go overboard. It's not like Beam Team 1 year. I'm not saying that. But Friday and then even yesterday was the first time in a while I was like, hey, Kings play at 7 o'clock. And it was like 6 o'clock. I was like, let me go get these wings because, like, I do want to watch the game. I do want to see what happens. Obviously, Sabonis was coming back, so I wanted to see what that looked like on Friday. But after how they played on Friday, you get to Sunday evening, I'm like, all right, let's see what they're like. It's been months since I had that type of energy towards watching a Kings game. And I think Dylan Cardwell and his energy and the way it's kind of spread throughout some of those guys is a big reason for that.
Yeah, I think the same thing about Max. And it reminds me of the 2018 Kings, the 18-19, the Dave Yeager year where they won 39 games. Like, look, this team is not nearly as successful as that team was, but it's a lot more talented than that team was. But they were fun, and they gave you something other than, just a dreary, what's going to probably be a 25-win season here. They ran, they played with heart, they played fast. As soon as a bucket was made, they had it running the other way already. Like, that's, I think we're starting to get to a point where there's a lot more fun to this, and that's good because this was getting a little dreadful to go watch and for people to tune into, and all of a sudden it's not. And a lot of that is because of the exuberance of guys like Dylan Cardwell and the play of Max Reynaud and again, Malik Monk finding himself while Dennis Schroeder was out for 3 games.
Yeah, things are fun, more enjoyable. Nick is kind of tough to watch right now, no?
Yeah, I mean, like, look, I think,
and tough in the sense of we really want a lot out of him, and it just hasn't shown.
Yeah, I think I've told you guys this. Like, it's easier to be Dylan Cardwell than it is to be Max Reynaud, and it's easier to be Keon Ellis than it is to be Nick Clifford. It's, when you have a whole bunch of things that if you're like a 5-tool or like a Swiss Army knife, right? Doug loves to talk about Swiss Army knife type players. If you're a guy that, can score with both hands and can go shoot the 3 and can take somebody off the dribble and can, like, you have all this stuff, that's really difficult to translate all of those things to the NBA court. When you're a guy that plays defense and shoots a 3 or plays defense and grabs rebounds, it's like you have 2 jobs. Go do those 2 things and do them really well. And so I think Neek has all kinds of things in his bag. I think he can take people off the dribble. I think he's an excellent passer. I think he's a great rebounder for his position. Like the defensive side of the ball, he's doing really well, like playing defense with his chest. But it's almost like there's too much to give him at such a young age. And so it's easier for some guys to just walk in and be the player they were in high school and college. And for other guys, it's not that easy because they don't give you the ball and let you dribble. They don't give you the ball and let you go draw fouls like Nick Clifford did his whole final year at Colorado State. They don't ask of you all of these things of you to score 18 points or to grab 9 rebounds. So you're kind of locked in a box and you don't know how to help. And again, I think it's just like the maturation of a young player. He'll get to the summer, they'll work on his 3-point shot, they'll work on some of the other basics, and he'll improve probably more during the summer than he will any point at this point in the season, unless we get to a point after the All-Star break where they've traded DeMar DeRozan, they've traded, Malik Monk, they've traded, Keon Ellis, they've traded maybe Zach LaVine, and all of a sudden Nick Clifford is needed for 25 to 30 minutes a game. And that's going to be when, again, it would be a scaled down team without all of these players that do lots and lots of things. And so he might be able to show more of his game, but I wouldn't be too concerned right now. Like if we're still talking this way next season, then we're also starting to compare him to Colby Jones and to Justin James and to that group, that type of player that isn't able to make the transition to the NBA level the right way.
And I would probably say if I was Doug Christie, Bobby Jackson, anybody on that staff, I don't need more of your bag. I need you to defend, and when the ball swung to you, knock down the open 3. That's it. I'm not looking for anything extra. You slash, a little bit. You do a really good job on offensive rebounding here and there, but like if you're waiting for the invitation or the opportunity to show more of what you got offensively, I'm not looking for that. Let's start with hitting an open 3, which I feel like I haven't seen him do in weeks at this point. So somebody in there should be simplifying the game for him. Defend, hit the open 3. That's your job right now. And we'll see if he's able to do that.
Yeah, but remember, there's a big difference between a scorer and a shooter, a pure shooter. And so I think Nick is more of a scorer than he is a pure shooter. So again, you're kind of asking him to limit who he is. And again, that's what you have to do, right? Until he's able to develop and show you that he can handle, task number 1. But still, it's like as a basketball player, you're fighting internally the whole time. The ball gets swung to you, and for your whole life, you're used to grabbing the ball and going right to the rim. And all of a sudden, you're asked to just stand there and shoot the 3. And so it's complicated. It's not super simple for some of these players to come into the league and find instant success, especially on a team with a ton of high usage players. So just like the opportunity is not going to be there. He needs to adapt for sure. But I think it's one thing to tell a player, hey, you need to adapt, but then you get him in summer league and you have him run the point and have him do all this stuff. And then you get to training camp, you're like, oh, look at this. He's playing this and this and this. And then you get to the actual NBA game, and it's like, nope. You don't get to do any of that. Go stand in the corner and shoot the 3.
Yeah, and James, that's the story of the NBA and people who make it who don't a lot of the times. Two guys that come to my mind off the top of my head are Matt Barnes and Trevor Ariza. They were their whole life scorers all over the place. And to Nick's credit or to his defense, these guys didn't figure it out right away. It took them a couple of years, but once they realized this is how I'm going to stay in the league by being a 3-and-D guy, being able to defend multiple positions, and being able to catch and shoot and knock down a 3, that's how they both were in the league for 10, 12 years. Other guys like a Dennis Smith Jr., who didn't figure out, like, this is how you got to do it, they're gone. Like, that's just the case. You're not – the majority of these guys, you ain't going to do nearly half of the things you were asked to do in college or that you think you're able to. You need to figure out what is going to keep me here, what's going to keep me on an NBA roster. And right now for Nick Clifford, his job is to be a 3-and-D guy. Stand in the corner for a few possessions. And when it comes to you, it gets swung to you, knock down the corner 3. That's your job. If you can't do that, we'll find the next guy to do that. Like that's who you are right now.
Real quick before we go to break, it's funny because before he got drafted, the year before he got drafted, he was just a 3-and-D guy. And then they took him and they added the passing and they added the ability to get to the rim and the ability to draw fouls in his final year. So he wasn't just a 3-and-D guy going into the league. Now it's like, hey, we got to back it up a little bit, and you got to be Keon Ellis, and then you can be Nee Clifford down the road.
Mm-hmm. We'll come back. We'll talk much more about the Kings with our Kings insider, James Ham. Specifically, has anything that we've seen over the course of the last couple of days, last couple of games, done anything to change your perception on them? We'll talk more with James Ham. We're dealing with Casey Return here on Sacramento Sports Leader, ESPN 1320.
Macho Man beat the crap out of him.
That was hilarious. I laughed
That's funny.
so hard when I saw that this morning. I was like, oh my God. Everybody really did hate that dude.
I'm surprised he didn't start bleeding.
They hit the shit out of him.
Did I ever tell you, when I worked at Copeland's, I had a kid who worked for me that had gone to like professional wrestling school. And he was like, he wasn't very big. He's probably like 5'6", but one of those dudes that can like do backflips and stuff. Like super strong little gymnast dude. And he was there and went up against a big guy and did some crazy move. And then the dude was too clumsy and dropped him on his head and almost broke his neck. And so he's like, okay, I probably shouldn't do this anymore because this is probably going to end up with me getting paralyzed or something.
Ahmed Johnson.
I was about to say, did he train with Goldberg?
We don't got to do all that, but like maybe D'Lo and KC take wrestling school for a day this summer.
Oh man, them dudes when they showed on Tough Enough when they had to do the ropes.
No, we'll just have you guys run the ropes. All you guys will just run the ropes for like 30 minutes.
We got to run the ropes and then take a bump. We got to hit the mat and take a bump.
I'm gonna start making calls.
I'm down. I'll go take some bumps for some social media videos.
Leezy, you ask if there's, since we have more tape on Max, is there any player he reminds me of? I don't want to make a judgment yet. I know this sounds weird. I want to wait and see how the Kings develop him for next season. Like, do they add 20 pounds to him? Do they keep him lean and have him as a perimeter player? Because I don't know what the final product is going to be. Like, go look at Vucevic as a young prospect coming out of USC. And, they decided again to make him sort of a bigger center, even though I think Vucevic is only 6'9". So I want to see what he looks like a year in. And he's not very old. I mean, he's not very young. What is he, 22, almost 23? Like, he's closer to developing into like a full-grown man.
I thought Big Boots was about 6'11". Let me see.
How many shots do we get of Mark Davis watching Fernando Mendoza tonight?
Is he going to be at the game?
Mm-hmm.
He is 6'9". Good call there, James.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he was taller than that.
Yeah, the Kings tried to get back in that draft and draft him. It was a 16th pick in the 2011 NBA draft.
Fantastic knowledge.
Yeah. I remember watching him pre-draft workouts. I also remember Rudy Gobert coming in and being like a stick. Like, his legs were like pencils. Like, he had clearly worked out, so he was trying to like flex for us. And it was like, man, before you start flexing, you should probably hit leg day.
Rudy
at least once. Yeah.
It's the day you walked into this league.
It's crazy. He's going to be a Hall of Famer.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think Gobert was pre. I want to say it's before Vivek on the team.
I'm sure it's nothing, Michael.
How long is he? Oh, no, 2014. No,
They
Vivek
had
on the
turned
team.
it around. I thought everything was going to be okay, and then it's been a bad 3 weeks or so, 2.5 weeks.
Hang on, James. All right, we're back here with James Ham talking Kings basketball. No Kings game tonight. They lost last night to Portland after beating Washington on Friday night. They'll take on the Miami Heat tomorrow and the Toronto Raptors on Wednesday. Both of those teams will be playing on the second night of a back-to-back. As Miami has Golden State tonight, and then Golden State has Toronto tomorrow. So Miami and Toronto will both be on the second night of a back-to-back when they take on the Sacramento Kings. Of course, the Kings will also be on the second night of a back-to-back when they take on Toronto, if that sort of thing matters to you. Of course, two tough teams coming up here. Hammer, has the way the Kings have played recently, particularly with wins against the Rockets, Lakers, and Knicks. Everybody beats the New York Knicks at this point. But with wins against 3 playoff teams, 3 good basketball teams, has that changed your perspective at all of this basketball team, maybe some of their players, maybe even how Doug is doing as a coach?
I would say certainly how Doug is doing as a coach, because I think he's somehow found a way to blend these guys together a little bit. So I think that was a problem. You had these young guys, you had too many injuries. The young guys are forced to play. Again, I talked about Precious earlier, but Precious doesn't get signed until the first week in November. So it's not like he had a training camp or anything. And the guy all of a sudden starts a whole bunch of games for you. I think this has just been like a really, really rocky season where guys have been in and out of the rotation. Guys have been hurt. And then when the losing starts to set in and it starts to snowball, it gets a little out of hand, it becomes just this bear. And it's really hard on everybody. We had this kind of interesting moment at the beginning of our pregame conversation with Doug yesterday. I asked him about like sort of how this is different for him to have a 4-game win streak coming into a game, and has it taken some of the pressure off of him? Does the coffee taste better? And he said, yeah, it does. But at the same time, it's a work in progress. And he gave the line about, you want, it's not always about wins and losses as much as it is about the process of getting better and all that. And so I do feel like they are getting better. And I also feel like some of the veterans are playing more to their strengths and not to just putting up stats on a bad team. And so sometimes that means that, you've got to give a little bit of yourself. Like, again, I thought DeMar DeRozan didn't have a great start to the game yesterday. He finished with 14 points, but he didn't get there until the fourth quarter, and he didn't get in double figures until the fourth quarter, but he had 7 assists. And, I mentioned it, how, they had 29 assists last night. All 10 guys had an assist. They had 36 assists on Friday. All 10 guys had an assist. Those are weird stats. Those are stats you don't usually see where all 10 guys. And what that means is that they're starting to play for each other a little bit. And that's something that the Doug is always preaching, is playing for each other and trying to get better. So do I think that it's a good thing that they're picking up a bunch of wins right now? No, because that ship has sailed. You can't do that now. But I do think it's a good thing to not lose every game, because what you don't want to do is have your identity be that you're just losers, that you're losing every single game and that you're not good. And you don't want that like permeating the locker room. You don't want that getting into the young players' heads. But I look at this season as one that's going to very likely have changes coming. And so what we see today, what we saw 3 weeks ago, it's almost like, again, we're dealing with multiple seasons within a season. And I kind of want to see what happens between now and February 5th. And before we really like just completely throw this team away. If not, if they don't do anything and they keep everybody together, I think it'd be the worst thing that they could do. But I could also see this team getting on a bit of a run because the second half of the season is really bad. Like, it's easy. They have the easiest schedule in the NBA from here on out. And it's not even, I don't think it's going to be really that close. So yeah, lots to think about with this group.
Do you ever think about seeing like Sabonis out there getting precious and the way that they played in the last week and a half, 2 weeks or so, and think that maybe this season could have gone differently? Or do you feel like it was always written to be how it is?
No, I mean, I think we all, like, we walked into the season and we all made our predictions. And, when Keegan got hurt right off the bat, I think my predictions went from like 38 to like 36 wins. But I also thought that the floor was like 30, 32 wins. And like, I am surprised that it's gone this far south. But I also, like, when you take over a team mid-season and it's just chaos and you trade your best player and you're trying to hold on, and Doug did every scouting report or most scouting reports himself. He had a real he wasn't dealing with people he was comfortable with. And so it was just like, hold on for dear life and get through the season last year. This offseason, Doug hires a whole staff and he does all this work. And I think he's realizing now, like, it's such a huge job to be a head coach. How many times does he have to talk to us in a week? And it's like 25 minutes a day during, when you have games. You got to talk in pregame, you got to talk in postgame. You got to talk at every practice. Like, he also has like 30 employees that are underneath him. Like, there's a whole coaching staff, the training staff. Those are all basically his employees when he's there. He's a manager of all of those people. And so you're getting pulled a million different ways. And he keeps saying, you don't know what this seat's like until you're sitting in it. And I've felt that from him the whole time, that he's fully digesting, as he's trying to do the best to digest what's happening the whole time. But sometimes you're going to lose 7 games in a row because you didn't make the right adjustment, or you had guys lose their way, or you had injuries, and you just got to keep playing through it. So I think it's been like again, it's going to end up being a bunch of seasons within one, but it's a really strange one to like kind of like figure out and wrap your head around.
Do we talk a lot about like Max, Dylan, the young guys, like what type of position this season can put them in for next year. Do you think what Doug is doing right now is putting him in a positive position for next season as the head coach?
I would hope so, because like, look, it's one thing for a general manager to sign a guy to a 2-way contract, and like put him in your building and say, yeah, he'll probably spend most of the time at Stockton. It's another thing to draft a guy in the second round and say, hey, he's probably going to spend the entire season in Stockton. They signed Drew Eubanks to play the backup center position. They did not, they did not draft Max Reynaud to be a starting center for 20 games in his first 40. That's not what they signed him up for. So I think Doug has done a really good job of developing the young players so far, him and his staff, but of also not losing sight of like the love, like, because that's what we're seeing right now. We're seeing a moment where they kind of came out the other side, and they're getting a moment where they can breathe for a minute and not just have like everything about them being so negative. And so I think, again, he's done a really good job of developing some of these guys. And it's like, if Neat Clifford becomes part of that, he becomes part of it. But, not everybody develops at the same pace, and not everybody continues to get better. I do want to see what Doug looks like without some of the security blankets. Like, if you take a DeMar DeRozan and move him, or a Domantas Sabonis and move him, what does it look like when Max Reynaud isn't just a young center who's playing because Domas is hurt, but he's your starting center moving forward? Or what does Keegan look like if he's your starting small forward and DeMar DeRozan isn't there shooting 15 to 16 shots a game? And it's his show, and he's got to perform. what does that look like? And so I think we still have a lot we can learn from this season, which is why you keep showing up and why you keep tuning in. We all want to see where it all ends up, especially after the All-Star break. I mean, after the trade deadline, when this team could look way different. And I'm kind of here for it. I want to see what the next version of this team can be, with a bunch of young guys running through a soft schedule in the second half. And, whether they win or lose, at least they're going to have an opportunity to compete on a lot of those games. Even if a lot of those players that again, security blanket type players, those aren't just security blankets for Doug, they're security blankets for the young guys as well. Take those things away and see how they look and see if they continue to grow or if they fall flat and you kind of go, they are who they are.
I wonder if they're not so much security blankets as like maybe it's the exact opposite, because you used DeMar as an example. You probably throw Levine in there, where Doug might feel like, yeah, I got to go to these guys, like I have to. Whereas there could be a certain like freeing feeling, like if they're not here past the trade deadline, and it's like, yeah, there is no pressure to play DeMar DeRozan here in the final minutes of the fourth quarter because so and so is playing really good. There's no pressure to play Zach LaVine right here because he's not here anymore, and I've got someone playing with, like, I can run through that. I wonder if there's a certain like, okay, I don't have to worry about that anymore. Maybe I'm not as talented. Maybe my group isn't as talented as they were, but I don't have to worry about that anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be a good thing. Like, I do want to see Keegan Murray. Like, who are you? What do you have for us? And, like, you're the guy. You're the number one option, the number two option. And again, if it doesn't work out, that's okay. That's not what this season's about. It's about discovery. And so I'm hoping we get to that point. But I also know if we get to game 65 and all these guys are still on the roster, it's going to be really tough for Doug to say, hey, DeMar, you're not playing tonight. It just is. Hey, Russ, you're not playing tonight. Zach, you're not playing tonight. And that's going to be very, very difficult. And so I don't know how it'll all work out, but it's at least interesting to like look ahead and see what the future might hold for Doug and for the rest of the squad.
Friday night, it felt like it was a late scratch at Keon Ellis. I can't remember how that whole day went, but Keon didn't play the last two games, and with Dennis Schroeder coming back, that was one of the things we were wondering about with the minutes with the guards. Didn't have to deal with it in those two games. Where is Keon at right now? Is it something that's day to day, game to game, or is he possibly out for a longer period of time?
It doesn't look like it's anything long term. I did see him Wednesday after, I can't even remember, was that the Knicks? I don't remember who was Wednesday. I saw him after.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay. I saw him after that game walk out with his knee wrapped in ice, a huge ice bag on his knee, and he was limping to the elevator going, to the practice facility for treatment after the game. So I say that because I want people to know that this isn't some mystical, they're holding Keon out because of injury. I mean, because he's about to get traded. He's legitimately banged up a little bit. He's just, got a little bit of looseness in his knee. So I don't know if that's going to be, like if it were a quote unquote playoff game, I think Keon could have played. But also, like, there's no reason to rush him at this point because you're already facing an uphill battle to get him minutes, especially with Schroeder coming back. But it is a legitimate injury. It's just not a major injury that's going to keep him out forever. He did have an MRI and it was clean, if that's the question, sort of.
Probably hasn't been discussed enough, but you said last week on the Insiders I think it was Friday. I can't remember what day it was. I think it was Friday though, that you're pretty sure Keon Ellis isn't going to be here much longer for Sacramento, be it trade deadline or off season. Like, Keon's future isn't with Sacramento.
Yeah, and I don't like, it's not animosity or anything. It's not that like they hate Keon or Keon hates them. But I think the relationship was slightly fractured during the offseason when they picked up his $2 million option as opposed to paying him like the $10+ million a year he was going to get on the open market if he were a free agent. The Kings just didn't have the money to do it, right? And they chose to spend their money on Dennis Schroeder what money they did have. And then, we've gone 40 something games into the season and Keon just hasn't like etched out his spot in the rotation and, sort of been able to get a guaranteed 24 minutes a night or whatever it might be. And so he's had a very up and down season. He's has stretches where he's shot the ball well. He's had stretches where he's turned the ball over more than you're used to. He hasn't been good in transition. There have been plenty of blow-bys on the defensive end of the ball where he's letting his player get to the basket. And look, I think Keon's got a lot going on in his head because the last thing you want to do going into a free agency year is have a season like this where you're in and out of the rotation. But I also know that there are teams around the league that love Keon Ellis, and they're more than willing to give him like a long-term contract this offseason. I think the Kings are looking at it and they understand very much that look, at $2 million, it's okay to be in and out of the rotation. If you paid him 10 or 12 million bucks and he can't earn his way onto the court and beat out other players, then all of a sudden it's on you. And you're the one who looks bad for signing the contract for a player like that. And his value goes down considerably when all of a sudden he's making 10 or 12 million versus 2. So I expect him to be either traded for like a late first round pick or a couple of second round picks, or I expect him to be as part of a bigger trade and to sort of act as a first round pick if you're trying to move off of a bigger contract in the coming weeks. And, there's always a possibility he's still on the roster. And there's always like a slight possibility that, February 9th rolls around and they have a conversation and maybe he signs back. But I think it's pretty far down a road at this point. And so I would be surprised.
James, before we get out of here, get away from the Kings just a little bit. You got a prediction on the national championship game going on tonight in Miami. Miami versus Indiana. Number 10 seed Miami taking on number 1 seed Indiana.
I'm going with Indiana because I think their quarterback is straight up a winner. And I think a team like the Las Vegas Raiders, more than arm strength or, height or weight or speed or anything else, they need a winner. And that dude just he's impressed me so much. He's very respectful. He seems like he's a good kid. When they ran over the last team, he ran right over to the other sideline and shook the coach's hand. And, he seems like he's got his head on right. And I think he's just really, really good. Now, I don't know if it translates to the pro level because I can name a bajillion different really good college quarterbacks that weren't good pro quarterbacks. But he just seems to have that it factor. And that makes me think that he's going to be able to get them through this game tonight.
Over under on shots of Michael Irvin.
What's the number? Matter of fact, don't even say the number. Over.
Yeah.
Over 47 times. Michael Irvin showing on the sidelines. You're like,
that
they need the Michael Irvin cam.
I actually don't hate that. One of the alt broadcasts on, one of the ESPN stations people pay $40 for.
Yeah.
Put the Michael Irvin cam on.
Yeah, put the mic
there.
on him too.
Well,
you do it on the app. You
do
can
the Patreon version. Yeah. That's definitely on the pay version.
I don't want to see that. I'm seeing the preview. I don't need the Ray Lewis cam. Keep him out of the way.
This is what a interesting difference in Miami, this historic football universe, the Michael Irvins and the Ray Lewises, and you can Dwayne Johnson, Scott X, you could just run through Jimmy Johnson, you could just run through the list of people who have been associated with that university. And then you got Indiana. And the first thing you think of with Indiana University is Bobby Knight. Like you are not thinking about their football program.
Yeah.
And here they are, where they have not only been incredible this season, they have in many, many instances been dominant.
Oh yeah.
And they have a chance to win a national title tonight against I don't want to use it. Heritage isn't the right term, but this is a school with like a very rich NFL history.
I think, Heritage
Is it fair?
fine. Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
This is one of the all-time schools in college football.
It feels like it. It feels like it. But, you think of like Georgia's won so many titles recently. Bama, like Clemson.
Yeah, but the 80s and 90s, Miami.
It's been a while since Miami's done it. Yeah, there might
Yeah.
be people watching tonight who are like,
For the first time.
yeah,
They got a couple
yeah,
of different
yeah.
generations, though. You got the 80s Miamis, then you got the early 2000s
2000s.
Miamis. These are some of the great teams in college football history. I think the 30 for 30 might have helped with that, too, as far as like people remembering who they were.
Or learning who they were.
That's right.
Yeah. I'm just like, I'm so impressed with is Fernando Mendoza, right? Because, I mean, this is a kid that was at Cal and left Cal last year. Indiana's never been on the stage. Like, what are they doing there? And not only does he have them on the stage, they're the number one team in the country and probably favored to win this game by at least something. I mean, like really, really.
Half or something like that.
Yeah, it's like super impressive because like what he did to Oregon was just crazy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm excited to watch a little bit of it.
I got the U. I think the U wins tonight.
All right.
Yeah, I was 2 for 2 over the weekend. There's no point in me even making predictions at this point. Sit this one out, kid. Well, the Knicks are within 22 now, so things are
you're
looking
saying
up.
There's a chance.
An
86
epic comeback.
And this is this the? Oh no, there's a whole slate of games tonight. This is the last of the marquee games tonight.
Well, I think Warriors Heat is on NBC.
I don't think it is. I think Boston and Detroit. There's the game. There's the marquee game. Boston and Detroit. They're on NBC tonight.
Two best teams in the East.
Not wrong.
Who would have thought?
Yeah.
Who would have
Certainly
thought?
isn't the Knicks right now.
It is not. We will be here tomorrow morning, though, at 10 a.m., beginning with James Ham and Kyle Madsen on the Insiders on Sacramento Sports Leader, ESPN 1320.
Vamos.